Yeah. So what do you think it means to be a good man? What's what? On like the performance versus fulfillment piece, like how do you distinguish between those? How do you know when you're just kind of chasing some arbitrary performance metric or you're actually finding your own fulfillment?
Yeah. I think the easiest equation in my head is that performance, and really it's not performance, it's accomplishment and achievement is a part of fulfillment. And so like in order to feel fulfilled, you have to have that in your life. However, the place where people get it wrong is where they think that achievement performance and achievement is fulfillment itself, and so they don't round out like how they're cultivating fulfillment. So fulfillment requires, there's this book, speaking of resources, this book written by Martin Seligman, it's called Flourish, where he breaks down the 5 elements of human flourishing or well-being, which are the 5 things that people pursue as an end in itself, not for any other thing. And that involves positive emotion, engagement, aka flow or flow state, and that flow state is part of performance in and of itself. But there's also positive relationships. There's deep meaning, which is like belonging to something that's greater than yourself, and then there's accomplishment. And so I think that a big shift is just people recognizing like, okay, am I attaching my sense of fulfillment to results only, or performance only, or achievement only, or am I looking at that bigger picture of like how do I cultivate fulfillment, and really like what's getting in the way of me cultivating fulfillment in each of those areas.
Yeah, and so one of the things that while you're talking, I was thinking about was that oftentimes we see healing and health and self-care and mental health neglected by a lot of men, uh, and sometimes in pursuit of accomplishment.
Mhm.
How does healing and trauma healing affect and improve both fulfillment, flourishing, and accomplishment?
Yeah, I think that, let me take a minute to kind of like unpack that for myself. When people are struggling with performance, accomplishment, or results, or on the flip side, when they're getting the performance, or they're performing the way they want, or they're getting the results and achievement that they want, but then they still are suffering. It's kind of like the person who gets the 6-figure income and is still miserable.
Mm-hmm.
Either of those situations, so is one the former, where you can't perform the way you want. Usually that comes down to a limiting belief or a limiting mindset, or an emotional block, which is like, we all are familiar with performance anxiety. And so a lot of the time people try to deal with their performance anxiety, or there could be other emotional things like guilt or depression. People try to deal with that through just thinking their way out of it, but ultimately those types of things are memory problems. It's like we have something in our history, our life experience, that hurt us really deeply to a point of overwhelm, but the way that we dealt with it is we pushed it away, we disconnected, we suppressed it, we tried to convince ourselves that not only did it's not hurting as much as it actually did, but it's not impacting us anymore right now. And so then when we get to later in life and we're struggling to, feel free in terms of like, I don't know, name the performance issue, like whether it's creative performance, sales, whatever it is, um, we can't make the connection because we're disconnected. We can't see like, oh, the reason why I'm this way or struggling with this is because I have some past unresolved pain. And what healing does is it helps you kind of like change the way that your body is holding that memory so that whatever emotional charge or limiting beliefs are connected to this performance, they kind of like evaporate or disappear in a way. And then I'm being very like high level. There's actual like neuroscience behind this. So I'm speaking in a colloquial sense. But they disappear. So like, and then when they disappear, what ends up happening is people then feel free to perform at their best, you know. And flow state also, it requires to have like an emotional clearing, and flow state is, you know, is the gold standard for peak performance right now. So if we have these limiting beliefs or emotional blocks, we can't enter flow. Therefore, we can't perform. Therefore, we can't achieve. On the flip side, let's say you do get the results you want or are achieving, but you're still miserable. Maybe you're disconnected from your family, you know, or disconnected in relationships, or maybe you just can't seem to actually internalize and feel and enjoy all the good that comes with your success. That also tends to correspond to unresolved hurt, pain, fear that's kind of like lodged or stuck in our bodies. And so, you know, we need to apply the same healing process to those situations as well to clear those from our bodies. And when we do clear those, or kind of it's kind of like update the way our body is holding that memory, when we do manage to do that, then naturally you're able to allow all of the positive in. You're able to connect to yourself more, which I know for sure is something that men struggle with, like connecting to their own feelings and emotions and their own inner child, nurturing themselves. And where you can do that more with yourself, then you can also do that more with the people you love, your spouse, your children, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I love that, especially the part where, like, when you have unresolved hurt or trauma or have been pushing aside checking in on yourself, even when those great things happen where you get the accomplishment you want, or some goal that you were pursuing, those can block the actual enjoyment of it,
Yeah.
which is so powerful, because that's kind of the mechanism. I think some people get stuck at, like, how is me going to therapy gonna get me farther in my career or more social influence. It may not directly, it could, like you were saying, but it also could be that, like, even as you're doing your own thing in business or social or influence, you actually may not even enjoy it unless you do that. Right. And so I think that's such an awesome insight, and you explained it so well. And so I think that's an awesome learning for it. It can just unlock the actual ability to experience it.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's the fulfillment aspect, you know. And even because, you know, as we go, we have small wins along the way, which are important. And they actually, the better you can internalize and enjoy the small wins along the way, that's like an energy boost, emotion wise, learning wise, to then produce and perform more and more, you know, better. And so, yeah, that's why like fulfillment is like people, there's like a way that I've been trying to say it. Like, instead of people using achievement as like the engine for fulfillment, there is a way that people can actually use fulfillment as an engine for achievement. And that's
Mhm.
counter to what people, and the other thing is people assume that, well, I can't have both. Like I'm either, I have to hustle, I have to grind. That is gonna require pain and sacrifice. I'm not gonna be fulfilled as I do so, but maybe it'll pay off eventually. It doesn't have to be that way. Like, yes, you gotta work your ass off. We all do. But the experience of doing it can feel way different.
Yeah, saving all your happiness for some later date when it all comes washing in doesn't really work. It reminds me of, I read the book Happiness Advantage a few months ago, and it was a similar kind of concept, like flipping it on its head. Like, delaying your happiness and self-care and fulfillment until you've accomplished a certain goal is doesn't when that day eventually comes, if you haven't been doing the work on yourself, you're not really able to accept and enjoyment. Yep. So I think that's such an important concept. The other thing I was going to ask is like, well, I guess so. When you work with like your clients as a coach, are you working with men only, or anyone? Anyone can be a client, and I was wondering if there's like how does masculinity play its own specific role in like complicating achieving fulfillment
and complicating achieving fulfillment.
It's I guess not necessarily complicated. It's effect. Where can like influences of where can it either help you find fulfillment, or and what are the influences that could hurt in finding fulfillment for men?
Yeah, I definitely think that. So no, I don't only work with men. I work with both men and women. But just along those lines of like whether they identify as leaders, founders, business owners, I have found that women do tend to be more open to this type of work and these types of ideas. And I have talked to my clients, my male clients, who, when I talk to them, they talk about like their decision making to sign up for coaching. And a lot of people, men specifically, have this orientation like I should be able to do it myself. Like if I have to ask for help, that means I'm weak. These are like mindsets that men have. And those mindsets that's what makes people, and men specifically, more averse to therapy, and beyond those mindsets, there's also kind of like people are secretly afraid of what they might find when they finally look within, because they've been spending so much time not. So there's fear of like, well, what might I find? What if I find something really ugly that I don't want to deal with? Or people actually are afraid of like, well, what if it hurts too much, it's overwhelming, and it actually backfires and takes me out of the game? So it's like, well, I try this healing work, but it could actually diminish my performance versus increasing it. And another one is like, they might be afraid of like, well, I don't know who I'll be if I let go of these defense mechanisms or coping strategies, or this identity that I've built up in terms of like, this is who I am. We have our identity of like, who am I as a man? As a man, I am this. As a man, I am that. Like, this is what works for me. And a lot of time, healing work leads people into like confronting and examining, like, what is this belief about myself? Where did it come from? Is it actually true? And the prospect of some things being not true, or letting go of some of those identities, can be really scary. And so men, we try to pretend like we're conditioned this way, by the way, but we pretend like we're this big, strong, whatever that is, independent, head of household, breadwinner. That those are the even if we reject those things, we still measure ourselves according to that secretly. At least me, I can speak for myself. And so and so it's scary. And then we don't want to admit that we're afraid.
Yeah, no, I think you captured a lot of guys' apprehensions towards asking for help, and seeking help because of those fears. What might I find when I actually do check in with myself and get to know myself? And change is scary and uncomfortable, and you might have to challenge things that have propped you up for years and kept you comfortable. And so I think those concepts are really important. And it shows that like the level of like vulnerability being strength, right? Like when you put yourself in the position to heal, it kind of flips it on its head. It's like, okay, it's actually really hard. And so you're doing something that's really strong. And that's why it's so important to pursue.
Yep. And I'm keenly aware that just saying this as an idea, like vulnerability is strength, is way easier said than done.
Mm-hmm.
It's scary, and so
it takes practice.
That's kind of like the challenge for men. So it's because it's like, oh, we say that we're strong, or I'm definitely speaking in generalizations, but it's like, how strong are you really? Are you willing to, like, it's like a vulnerability as a challenge, vulnerability with yourself as a challenge, to see how strong you really are, like how brave or courageous you really are.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, totally. And I think it's something you can practice as well. And it's certainly at least having that as a concept for guys, it can just be a starting point. And it's something I'm still working on, like how to best, and you've voiced it incredibly well. I think it's one of the key tenets I just really want to share with the community of guys who follow us. And so on that sharing, just I want to be cognizant. I only took half an hour of your time to 4:30. Well, I will let you go as we get to 8:30, and I'm gonna get kicked out of my conference room. Or at 4:30, I'll get kicked out of my conference room. But it was really awesome to meet you. You explained really challenging concepts in ways that I think are really like easy to understand and shareable, and have like awesome insights. So I would definitely love to stay in touch and continue the conversation. I think it could be a really, really cool thing.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Same. All right. Back to you. Like, thank you for just creating and holding this space. Like, feels like a space for me to just express what I believe in and care about. But also, I'm clear that it's like the conversation that we need, people in general to need to be having. So yeah, I'm really grateful too, and I'm looking forward.
100%. Yeah, thank you for contributing. Like, we're just, like I said, collecting perspectives in our video library, and so people who visit the page, they're not going to resonate with all of them, but they're going to resonate with some of them. And so I just really appreciate you contributing to the conversation. And I will be in touch over email with anything you think of, extra comments, links, etc. So we'll be in touch.
All right, cool. Talk to you soon.
Awesome. Have a good rest of the night.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah. So what do you think it means to be a good man?
I don't think there's a single definition.
Things that make up a good man are just the things that make up a good person. Someone who's honest, someone who's decent.
You're also willing to express yourself in a healthy way, and you're in touch with your emotions as well.